And I think it's a really hard pill to swallow for us sometimes. It's like diversity can happen through happenstance. You can bring different groups of people together. You can show a very diverse picture. You can put people together, but inclusion is what happens once they are together.
This is the Rebel HR Podcast, the podcast where we talk to human resources innovators about innovation in the world of HR. If you're a people leader or you're looking for a new way to think about how to help others be successful, this is the podcast for you. Rebel on, HR Rebels. All right, Rebel HR listeners, hope everybody is having a great day and really excited for our guest this week. Before I hit record, I said every once in a while I get a guest recommendation and I just have to meet this person. And that is definitely the person we're talking to today. So we are going to be talking to Odessa Jenkins. She is a sports disruptor and a known leadership expert who is also named one of the most influential and powerful women in sports by Sports Illustrated. She co-founded the Women's National Tackle Football League. She is the first female owner and coach of a national sports team and the winningest female football coach in football history. She is also one of Silicon Valley's only openly gay Black female presidents of a technology company, Emtrain, that is helping to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion programs among Fortune 500 companies. Thank you so much for joining us today, Odessa.
Thank you so much for having me, Kyle. How are things?
Things are good. Things are kind of like Groundhog Day, as I feel like we're kind of back in 2020 again. But, we're all in this together, HR people. We got our tribe, so we're doing fine.
That's good to hear. We are all in this together. It's an eerie thing that we're all being put in similar circumstances in this world right now, which is some ways good. Like we all need to level set a little bit about how important we think we are.
I love that perspective. I do think, early last year when things were really wild, we really got down to the base of humanity, right? It's like, hey, we're all in this together, right? Yeah. So I agree 100%.
And then I feel like we went through a political nightmare and now here we are again trying to level set. Might not be the worst thing again.
It might not be. Like I think that hopefully we don't get reminded by disaster as often that we are all in this together and that you are a piece to a puzzle, not the entire puzzle. I believe in being confident and self-assured and taking care of your business and your family, but it is critical that we know we don't operate alone. And so I think if nothing good comes out of this, that hopefully will come out for a great majority of us.
I agree. I love the optimism. I'm wired the exact same way, and I think many people in our field are feel that way. But it's really hard to remember that on a day-to-day basis sometimes. So I want to maybe start off by just understanding more about you. What prompted you to do such exceptional things? And I mean, your biography is just so fascinating. So what is the OJ origin story?
The OJ origin story. Yeah, for me, it's always been really simple. I have a responsibility. I think it always started with the responsibility of where I was from and people who are like me. I'm from South Central Los Angeles. I grew up in what a lot of people would think was a disadvantaged neighborhood, a society of people who had a lot of obstacles put in front of them. And so for me, it started very early on in life where my parents and my community and my coaches and my educators, the people around me, kind of instilled this: whenever you get an opportunity, you go crush it. Whenever you're given something, you go multiply it. Whenever something feels unattainable, you go grab it. And so it's just always this reiterating that to me. And it never had anything to do with the outcome. It never had to do, hey, go be a president. Like it wasn't at all that. It was just whatever's put in front of you, you go win and you go kill it, and you let them know that people like you exist and can win whatever you're doing. And that it's always been a responsibility to that for me.
So I love the term you use there, that, to multiply. And just so the audience understands, so OJ has multiplied a lot of things. So 5 times national champion, 2 times USA national team captain, 2 times gold medalist, and named the world's leading running back by FIFA in 2013. So clearly you've got a winning mindset. So
for sure, yeah, and it happened to me too. I think that's the thing that's unique, is that I've helped multiply a lot of businesses. When I went into YourCause, we were 32 people, 24 clients. I walked out, we were 600 clients. Sold that thing for $180 million, and we're rocking and rolling at Emtrain. So, I think what I hope to demonstrate is that, yeah, I'm competitive, but results oriented too. And I think as a woman, I have a responsibility to show that women can be competitive and can be intentional and can have ingenuity and be all these things that make you want to compete at the highest level and achieve. Because I don't just want it. I want to show the numbers. I want to show that it can be done.
You make me feel like I need to get off my couch more and put the wine down and try to get a little more something done.
No, listen, Molly, I am living too. I'm living all of my life. I'm, as the kids say, I'm living my best life. I think that a lot of it, when you talk about wealth and when you talk about people being put in the best position they can, it's really just all about being able to do what they want to do, right? That's what financial wealth gets you. That's what educational wealth gets you. That's what wealth and health gets you, the ability to do what you want to do. And so for me, as I build wealth and multiple different definitions of wealth, it's just leading me to get to do more of what I want.
Yeah, you've done amazing things. You mentioned something about you're competitive in nature. And a lot of women who are competitive, I feel like, get stereotyped in the worst way. Have you experienced this, or what would your advice be for women that are competitive, but maybe have been labeled not so nice in the past?
Yeah, I think there's one thing I want to clarify. I think everyone who's overly competitive gets classified the same way. We talk about men getting classified different as women. I think it's not the classification, it's the consequence of the classification that harms women. It's like, hey, everybody has no empathy and that is aggressive when aggression isn't called for is kind of perceived the same way by most humans. But when it's a woman, the consequences of it is, I don't want to be around her. She's the B word. She is insensitive to the needs of the employee base. She's not here for other women. All of those things get labeled on us. What I would tell anyone, but particularly women who are in that place where you find yourself competitive and always willing to win, is one, remember that empathy is a gift, right? And it's a gift that you should receive and give. Because I think that regardless of our personality types or how we want to approach the world, like we talked about it in the beginning, you're not alone. So stay competitive, stay aggressive, but never lose sight of the fact that you are trying to impact and affect other people. And if you are in a scenario where your aggression and your willingness to compete is also being met with empathy and it's not working, then you might be in the wrong environment. Because I'll never ask someone who's competitive to stop competing. I think that that's the absolute wrong advice to give people. So I'll never ask a competitor to stop competing. I'll just ask a competitor to keep adding tools to their toolbox. Empathy, the ability to communicate, the ability to share what happens when you don't win, how to take a L, all those things you have to teach a competitive person. You have to equip them. So that's what I would tell her if she's listening and she's like, yeah, I want to compete and win all the time. keep competing. Just keep adding other things to your toolbox as well.
Yeah. I love competition and empathy together. It's such a great formula. And sorry, Kyle, that's what's going to make women just change the world one day.
One day, we're already changing this world.
We are changing the world. You're very right.
Are you gonna give us credit for
You're
it?
Right.
What we want to know. Yeah.
Watch out, boys.
Yes.
We're on our way.
Hey, I'm all for it. Believe me. And my wife is a strong woman and reminds me of that every single day, and that's why I married her. So, keep challenging us guys to do better. I'm all for it. Make us better.
One question, kind of want to stay here just for 1 second. So obviously you have a background in a more predominantly male environments, right? Sports and all of that stuff. What advice do you have for either business leaders or just leaders in general? How do we get more inclusion and how do we get more equity in those types of environments that are more predominantly men?
Yeah, I think that we have to be intentional. So inclusion is tough because inclusion belongs to the empowered. And I think it's a really hard pill to swallow for us sometimes. It's like diversity can happen through happenstance. You can bring different groups of people together. You can show a very diverse picture. You can put people together, but inclusion is what happens once they are together. And inclusion means shared power. It means rearranged power. To me, it's all about power and influence and communication and what happens when power shifts, right? All of these things that need to happen that when power shifts. And for me, there needs to be certain skill sets in the building, in the business, on the team in order to truly handle inclusion. And I know that's controversial to say handle inclusion, but I'm a realist. Like, if you come to me and you tell me the way I've lived my life, the way that I've built my life, the way I've built my career, everything that has been made valuable to me is not just needs to change, but might be wrong, I'm going to ask some really tough questions. One, why should I change? And what are you going to give me? What tools are you going to give me to ensure that I'm going to be okay in the end? So when we go back to your question about like how to get inclusion in these places that are predominantly male, I think we start with the men. We start with what skill sets are we building in those men to be prepared for all the tough things that inclusion brings. Decision-making processes. How do we make decisions in a room that no longer looks like it looked before? When I bring in a female coach to a locker room that's never had a woman in there, what kind of things should I be saying? How should I be making my decisions? Who's teaching me how to value the differences between us two? How do I make sure that she is walking into this room, her authentic self, the same way that I am? How do I handle the curiosity that I have as the empowered to those who are coming in and creating diversity in this space? I think we all want it to be so simple. Just put a bunch of different people together in a room and they're going to figure it out. And when I say room, I mean like figuratively, an office space, a team, your places of worship, anywhere, the store, communities. I think that it is all rooted in one, your intention, but those who are in power, those with the power, need to make sure that you have the right skill in the room for you when you get shocked. Because diversity is hard, inclusion is shocking.
We'll be back after a quick break.
And so used to having everything in front of them right away that we forget that innovation just takes time. I myself, I get frustrated too. Why? And this as being one of my best friends is, hey, I talk to you all the time. Hey, man, I'm frustrated in the fact that I can't seem to just get there in the next day. But that's just not how these things work, right? Innovation needs to be planned out. It needs to be very methodical. And then when it finally hits, that's when it seems like to everyone else that it sort of just came out of nowhere. But to you, the amount of dedication that it took over that time.
I love that perspective. I think it's a really interesting to hear how you approach it. And, obviously you made this comment, you do a lot of your work for, you called it people like me. And so, throughout your life, there's been some differences in a lot of your world, I can only guess. So how did you cultivate that approach as you were growing as a leader, as a player, as a coach? How did you come to that realization? And I got to believe that you had some trials and tribulations to get there.
All kinds, but this is where sports is a cheat code. And it's a cheat code particularly for women, for those who are different, for those who are unique. I was watching the story of Caitlyn Jenner the other day and listening to her talk about how what sport did for her in her life to help her make it through some very tough scenarios. And sport has done similar for everyone. Sports is automatically diverse, right? It's a microcosm of life. So you learn all these communication tools. You learn how to have critical thinking. You learn how to work through this problem solving, these tough scenarios, all these practices that you're going to need in business, all these practices that you're going to need in relationships. You literally practice them every day in sport. So where I think I developed this ability to walk into a room or a business or to build a relationship with someone like me, like every business leader that I've had leading up to my career where I was the business leader myself has been nothing like me, looked nothing like me, straight cisgendered white male. It just, that has just been the case. And people always say, how did you get like Matt to talk to you like that or to think differently? And I would say my secret sauce is sport. And sport is rooted in issue resolution and conflict resolution and communication and self-esteem and knowing your role, know your responsibility. But even more important, it's rooted in achieving. And people like people that get stuff done. And I learned early on, like, listen, if I want somebody to listen to me, they will listen if I'm good, right? The likelihood, and some people haven't had this scenario, but the likelihood of someone listening to me that's different than me, that thinks that I can help them, is higher. If you think I can help you, you are more likely to listen to me, to have a conversation with me, to engage in me. Once you talk to me and you engage with me, I got you. Because sports has taught me how to do all these other things. I know how to listen to your differences or your question about me and not take it personally. Because almost nothing is personal, right? Almost everything is about you trying to learn. Your fear, your whatever is about you. Almost never about me. So I think that you asked my how. My how is I've figured out a way how to transform those lessons learned as a young girl in athletics to business and almost every other dynamic in my life.
And now, a word from our sponsors. When Molly, Patrick, and I started to figure out how to start our own podcast, we didn't know where to start. Thankfully, we found Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout makes it super easy for us to upload our episodes, track our listeners, and get listed on all the major podcast networks. Today's a great day to start your own podcast. I know that you're one of our listeners, so you've definitely got something to say. Whether you're looking for a new marketing channel, have a message you want to share with the world, or just think it would be fun to have your own talk show, podcasting is an easy, inexpensive, and fun way to expand your reach online. Buzzsprout is hands down the easiest and best way to launch, promote, and track your podcast. Your show can be online and listed in all the major podcast directories within minutes of finishing your recording. Podcasting isn't that hard when you have the right partner. And the team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. And now, for listeners of Rebel HR, you can get a $20 Amazon gift card sent to you from Buzzsprout by clicking in the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Are you looking to grow your personal brand or your business brand? Take it from me that podcasts are a great way to do it. Here's the secret. We all want to feel connected to the brands that we buy from. What better way to humanize a brand than through sharing your personal story on a podcast? I have had great success with Kitcaster. Kitcaster is a podcast booking agency that specializes in developing real human connections through podcast appearances. And let me tell you, it's all about the right human connection. You can expect a completely customized concierge service from their staff of communication experts. Kitcaster is your secret weapon in podcasting for business. Your audience is waiting to hear from you. For a limited time offer, listeners to the Rebel HR podcast can go to www.kitcaster.com/rebel to get a special offer for friends of the podcast. Rebel on. I love that. And, I want to circle back to something you said in response to Molly's question. And I thought it was articulated so well. And you talked about the consequence of a classification. And I think that that's such an important point, very well made. And that the truth is we all have some level of classification of being different, right? And a lot of times and I'm sorry, I'm the white cisgendered,
It's
guy
cool.
that,
It's cool.
so I'm one of them.
We invite you to the picnic. You're welcome. We're going to bring you to the picnic. It's
We
cool.
love you,
And
Kyle.
But I think a lot of times, individuals in my seat, that classification piece, there's a lot of fear to ask questions about that, for fear of being, for being labeled as a racist or a sexist or anything like that. But I think that is actually, that's not helping the conversation to actually learn, move forward, empower people with differences or people from a minoritized community to achieve their full potential. And the truth is, like me, I mean, I'm from rural Iowa, right? What's comfortable for me is a bunch of other white guys. And if I'm not intentional about forcing myself to learn and listen and asking what may be perceived as a rude or uncomfortable question about a classification, the consequence is, we stay in our little bubble and we perpetuate some of these issues that are causing some of the challenges related to DEI in general.
Yeah. I mean, what if you knew you were chemically predispositioned to be more comfortable around people who were like you, who looked like you, who had the same life experiences of you, because there's a natural disposition to run away from danger, and difference sometimes in your brain is categorized as danger, right? If it's different, it evokes fear. Mm-hmm. Fear evokes, me to react and go grab for certain things, to defend myself, to run, to do all these things. And so a lot of the like L&D professionals and that connect with the DE&I professionals are all talking about this thing, like, you're predisposed to bias. You're predisposed to bias. There's this unconscious bias. There's these things. It's like, okay, well, yeah. But to your point, there's a consequence to me receiving that category and you continuing to note my category.
Right.
And so I think that we, have to start changing the conversation a little bit ourselves to receive the fact that bias is there. We have to receive the fact that there's comfort in the things that are a part of my culture. This is another sort of uncomfortable thing that I talk to my team about, and we talk about all the time. And it's like, when there is a connection between race and culture, if I'm comfortable with my culture, does that mean I'm necessarily just comfortable with my race? And there's a really hard conversation about white American culture versus Black American culture, right? Is there a white American culture? And if there is it okay for you, Kyle, to be as comfortable with white American culture and that not feel like racism as I am with the idea of a hot pressing comb touching the hair and what that smells like, because I have Southern Baptist parents? So it goes way deeper than I think we want it to go, but I'm categorizing you a certain way and I'm immediately saying, white cisgender male, it means one, Kyle's got a better chance than I do, so I'm a little pissed at him. Two, Kyle's got a white male American culture, but what does that mean? right? Is that a culture of harm to me, or is there some stuff that's just for Kyle and white guys, and is that cool? And I think that's like this really, gray area that we're talking about when we talk about inclusion that we need to do a better job at. And some of that doesn't get figured out. And some of these differences don't align with each other. But I think where we can align is like you and I just had that conversation. Like, you feel all right? I feel okay still.
Yeah, I'm good. Now I'm just curious. So let me ask you a question.
Boy,
So
here we go.
when I said I was born in rural Iowa, what was your reaction to that? Or I guess what was your assumption of me when you heard that?
My assumption was that you didn't have a very diverse upbringing. Like when I think about rural Iowa, I don't think about diversity. I'm born in a city. So I think about the polar opposite of growing up in LA. I think about like, as I'm starting to think now, I'm like, how did Kyle get around when he was a kid? What jobs were available? What was the job of choice in your family versus my family? What kind of music did you listen to, and what drove you to listen? Where'd you go to church? Did you go to church? Like I start to think about you didn't have as many options as I had in the city. And so that automatically made me think, Kyle maybe didn't see much in his upbringing. Therefore, he might not have been through much. Right?
100%. You're 100% correct. So there was one black family in town of 5,000. And yeah, I mean, job option. My parents were teachers. My dad taught shop at the local prison. That the local prison was essentially the industry of our community. It's one of the big prisons in the state. And my exposure to diversity didn't happen until college. I mean, really. I mean, it just, and then my world like blew up. Right. So yeah, I would say I lived a very sheltered life. It was very comfortable. It was very safe feeling, but I think the other thing, it's really interesting. So you're talking about like white male culture. I can't speak for other white males. I can tell you my culture raised where I'm at was what we all call Iowa nice, which I describe as kind of passive aggressive. Like you might think things, but don't say it, and so conflict was really hard for me. But so I've had to, like, honestly, I've kind of had to unlearn all that to be an effective HR practitioner.
And that's why we don't have many of them in Iowa.
I bet you have. But the tough thing, and when I'm talking to, people that I'm trying to influence to either create, DE&I programs or to advance themselves in understanding of inclusion, and it's usually people who hold power. And when I'm talking to them about that, it's like always trying to get them to self-reflect on, hey, what part of this can you hang on to that is good? And what part of this that you absolutely want to hang on to that you think is good? And what are you willing to give up in order to truly get us to this place? And I don't know, that just always starts people from a nice, like, space of being empowered. Because I think, again, a lot of this is about, distribution of power and disruption of power and what happens when those things, go. One of my favorite athletes is Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant was sitting with Ron Artest, who had just changed his name to Metta World Peace. This was after the Indiana-Detroit basketball fiasco. Metta World Peace, for those who don't know, was a very disrupted athlete, a very challenged man. And he came and he met Kobe Bryant, who's a stark competitor. And Metta World Peace had just changed his name, just started to get in Zen, really changed his life. And he wasn't playing well. He wasn't being his normal aggressive self. And he came to Kobe and Kobe said, hey, what are you doing? Why aren't I need that same guy that was in Indiana. And Metta World Peace tells him, listen, I'm a different man. I'm not that same aggressive person. I can't be that and be Metta World Peace. And Kobe tells him, how do you think you get peace And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, war. That's how you get peace. And Meta World Peace goes and say, well, okay. I thought there were two ways, multiple. And then Kobe tells him, listen, on the court, you go to war. And off the court, you have understanding, right? You have an understanding of how to get to peace. And I think for us in this world, we are deciding one of two things. We're deciding to either go to war, which always results in disruption, but sometimes results in peace, or we're deciding to go to understanding, which is much more complicated. I'd like to go the way of understanding because I'm a peaceful being. I don't, have like enough violence in my upbringing to not want any of that anymore. But I think it's something we have to get real about. Like, if you want change, how do you truly get change on the scale that we are trying to affect?
That's powerful. I'm reflecting here, and I'm, shifting back into the workplace, and I'm thinking, I really want to get to a point of, inclusion, equity within my organization, but we can't have a war within the organization. So how understanding may be harder, but what are the what are some of the steps or tactics that we can employ to do this in a way that is comfortable for the organization?
Yeah. So it won't be comfortable. War doesn't mean discomfort, and understanding doesn't mean comfort. So I want to make sure it's not going to be comfortable. You got to get out of your comfort zone. But I think there are certain things that every company can do. I think one is like, what's your plan? Like, what's your plan? What's your stated like plan? And I don't even want to say goal, because I think goal is like a really weird word when it comes to inclusion. But what's your plan? You want people to have what environment? You want this community to feel like a community to whom? Like, what are the outcomes that we want? How do we want our environment to change? Is, I think, a great way to put it. Okay. And then how are we being intentional? You can help yourself be intentional with, well, what are the processes that you have in place that influence inclusion? What are your communications positions around inclusion? How are you influencing allyship in your communications and your decision-making processes? How are you infusing valuing differences in every way you communicate, whether it be your meetings or your written communication, your marketing? To your point, if we're going to handle this via understanding, there's going to be curiosity. How are we making room for that curiosity? How are we making space for that on a day-to-day basis? This is why I'm saying it's not comfortable, because immediately your CFO goes, you got time for curiosity? We need to get this cost per lead down. Like, we're talking about new biz growth, and you're trying to make room for curiosity. So that's why it's not always comfortable, because you have to make space for it. How are you making space for authenticity and belonging? So one of the ways is you got to get tools. Like, you can't do it on your own. I think there's technology and people that serve you. Technology like ours at Emtrain, it's like, let's put some training and some content and some data around you that's going to truly help you grow and learn and get a learning process and a curriculum around building these skill sets. The other thing, though, is who's running the business, who's making decisions in the business, and do they actually want this to happen, and have they proved it with where they're putting their money and their time? So, like, because we can all, as mid-managers, you could plan what you want to plan. As the director of inclusion, you can plan what you want to plan. But ultimately, if you're the folks writing the checks and making the budgets are turning down requests for getting, resources, technology, people, building these skill sets, evaluating hires on these things, they're turning those things down, then you won't get inclusion. You sure in the hell won't get equity. Yeah. And you won't be really being intentional.
Yep.
What advice do you have for those people? They keep getting shot down.
Leave. Here's the thing. You are empowered. I'm not part of we anymore. I'm the man now. So you as the employee, you run the business.
Mm-hmm.
You run the business. You decide. See, this next generation has figured it out. The internet, social media has done this. It has made them a community in cases where they wouldn't normally have community. So they're starting to figure out, you know what? What is this business without us?
Right.
It isn't. So take your time, your talents, and your interests to places that appreciate and complement that time, talent, and interest. Period.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I would make a point.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Sorry, Molly. I was going to say, I would make a point. I'm going through this right now. Budget time. Every HR person's favorite time of the year.
Oh, yeah.
And oh, by the way, when you're going through that, bring in donuts for your finance team because they need all the help they can get, right? So the first step is like make nice with the people that set the budgets.
Yes.
so that's like, let's start there. We're talking about empathy. Like, man, it really sucks to be in your job right now. You're working 16-hour days. Here's some donuts, right? Like, do that. But I would say the worst thing you can do as an HR person is not ask, right?
Oh,
like you gotta have a plan.
Or complain about it. You didn't ask.
Yes.
You complain.
Exactly.
This
You
is
gotta
a
have a plan.
problem, but I don't have a solution that I'm going to present to you. There's nothing worse than that.
You bring up a really good point, but I think that the other thing is like a solution. Like some people have a really hard time about finding what the solution is, but there's no shortage of resources that are telling you where to get started, right? Hey, if you want to build more diversity in the company, start with hiring. Start with your recruiting process, start with your onboarding process and your post-onboarding processes, because those are where we lose people the most, right? We lose them. So getting them is hard enough, but then we lose them right away, or right after onboarding, we really lose them because we aren't really sufficiently supporting them after they've met our representative and they meet the real us and they're like, ooh, who is this guy? So it's like if you're an HR professional, I'd say, focus in on those areas of the company. But to your point, you're right. Like ask. Once you find a solution, once you find some technology, once you find, some learning guidance, some expertise, and you know what you want to go and do, write your number down, slide it across the desk like,
with the donut. That's it.
Put over, put a donut on top of it, as Kyle says, slide it over and see what you get.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think, just from talking to you, I feel like you build such great relationships and you just have such an influence and can make an impact on whoever you're talking to. I can definitely see how you achieve the results that you do and have just skyrocketed with these results of everything that you're a part of. I definitely think people need to just think about the impact and influence that they do have and work on refining that skill as much as possible, because I can see that is what has led to your success.
Yeah, and I've to be fair to everyone, I've fought and I've lost and I've left, right? So I'm not giving anyone advice that I haven't practiced in my own career. I think that I've been willing to. I want to see companies be available, and I'm going back to this look like me, Kyle thing, but people that experience the world like I've experienced it and you've experienced it, like us three here, like we were sitting here being representative in a company, it would be pretty cool. And so I want to build companies that have no question about whether or not they're prepared for all kinds of diversity. And you have to start somewhere. So most people start with diversity of race, diversity of ethnicity, then diversity of gender and diversity of sexuality. But like I continue to push myself, later on in my career, I'm learning about diversity of learning and even learning more about mental differences and how you can better support employees in your employee base who might learn different or have different mental capabilities. Like those things are surreal to a lot of people leaders, but you could be missing on great talent because you don't have the ability to handle someone's handicap, and how so I think for us, even for me, as I'm learning on a day-to-day basis, what does adversity truly mean to the workplace, but also what does diversity truly mean to the workplace? Now, are we dealing with adversity, or are we just dealing with diversity? And how do I treat it different?
I love it. Mm-hmm. And to circle back to where we started this podcast, we're all in this together, right? So it takes that open-mindedness, the honesty, and and allowing people to get a little uncomfortable to grow. I love that.
Yeah.
Make peace, not war. Make peace, not war, for sure. Yeah, I hope that I'm very hopeful. I'm optimistic. I love people. I think we do way more good than we do harm. And I think one of the greatest gifts is the ability for people to come together. But that's like that's a pack animal talking. That's the coach in me. That's the person that loves team talking, right? I wouldn't do well as an individual contributor, right? I'm all about team.
I mean, when you were saying that, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I could see why she's a coach.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd play for you. I would suck, but I would play for you. I would warm that bench so good.
There's different ways
to say. I got you.
All good, Kyle. Molly's got it worked out.
Now, real question. Did you really know where Iowa is when Kyle asked you? Could you picture it? Most people will say Ohio.
I did. I actually hired 2 people from Iowa. Shout out to Leah Gilbert. And there was another guy I hired from Iowa. I can't remember his name. Anyway, but in my career, I've had 2 people, 2 employees from Iowa, both 2 amazing people. So shout out to Iowa. The 2 examples I've ever had, 3 now. I've all been really dope people. So
awesome.
I'll take it. I've never, you know what? I don't think anybody has ever used the adjective dope to describe me. I love it. I will take that. I'm going to put that on the podcast. I can't believe that,
Kyle.
I'm going to put that. No. Oh, come on.
I've seen you do karaoke, your air guitar. It was pretty dope.
Why are you holding up?
Yeah, well, Yeah, we could talk music. Yeah, you talked like what kind of music you listen to. Well, yeah, we could talk that for the whole podcast. We don't have time for that. So that's another episode. All right. Well, we are steadily coming up to the end of time. It's flown by. It's been such a wonderful conversation. I wish we had another 3 hours to keep going. But as the president of an organization, I'm sure that you have many things building up in your inbox right now. So we are going to shift gears. We're going to go into the Rebel HR Flash Round. So ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1. What is your favorite people book?
The Power of Who by Bob Bodine. I don't know if I'm supposed to emphasize on that. Am I supposed to?
I'm not familiar. What is the Power of Who?
Power of Who by Bob Bodine. I'm not a huge reader, so I like to read things that are quick that can give me immediate return. And it's a book that I recommend to every people leader. But really what it talks about is empowerment around your network, and how everyone already knows everyone that they need to know to get where they need to get in life. And it's a story about like self-esteem, believing in self, but also about the power and the ability to network and all the skills that you build when you truly learn how to become a good networker. Like to your point, asking for what you want and building out a plan. And I think particularly for women, we have a really hard time asking for what we want. And so it really like builds up that skill and that muscle around, how do I build a network or a board of directors around me that's going to tell me the truth, that's going to help me achieve my goals. And it's this fabulous perspective on it. So yeah, Bob Bodine, The Power of Who.
Oh, I love that. All right. Question number 2. Who should we be listening to?
Yourself. Yourself. I think, we're in a world of where there's so much noise and so many voices. And I think, sure, there's all kinds of podcasts and music and books and lectures and whatever is meaningful to you of the day you can have. But I think I don't know, the power of self-esteem is getting lost in our society. And I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm just talking about believing and valuing and loving on yourself. And I think we need to do more internalizing on that these days. So I would say, listen to yourself, learn how to listen to what you need physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I think it'll help you develop as a person.
Love that. Great answer. That's well said.
I feel like I heard that from another wise man not too long ago.
All right. Last question. How can our listeners connect with you?
You can, LinkedIn is awesome. I'm Odessa Jenkins on LinkedIn, or you can catch me on Twitter. I think I'm ojenkins03 on Twitter. But yeah, LinkedIn's the best place to connect with me at Odessa Jenkins.
Perfect. And the company is Emtrain, Emtrain. And they help with DEI programs. We'll have all those links in the show notes so that you can just click into your podcast listener, click in the show notes and find out more. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of really interested listeners, and this has been such an interesting conversation because it's a little bit of a different take on DEI. And, I think that all of the advice I think is really, it's actionable, it's pragmatic, and it's something that we can all start to do in our organizations right now. So really appreciate the time. Been a great conversation.
No, thank you. I want to make sure it's actionable. I think that's why I joined the Emtrain cause, and I'm hoping, whether it be the WNFC or Emtrain or whatever I'm doing, that it's something that's going to help change the world one day at a time, my friend.
I was one of those people that thought this was all so simple, like put each other in a room, be kind. And let me tell you, I have had so many people talk to me about all this stuff. And you're probably the first one that has talked about it in a way that I'm like, it makes sense why I was so wrong in my thinking before. So I definitely appreciated this conversation.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate y'all having me.
Thank you. Changing the world, OJ. Thank you.
Let's do it. You too. Kyle and Molly. Y'all like a superhero tandem. Y'all need to keep going.
There you go. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks again.
All right. Take care.
All right. That does it for the Rebel HR podcast. Big thank you to our guests. Follow us on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, Twitter at Rebel HR Guy, or see our website at rebelhumanresources.com. The views and opinions expressed by Rebel HR Podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any of the organizations that we represent. No animals were harmed during the filming of this podcast.
Baby.